I was never one to snoop. Not really. But the living room had been begging for a proper cleaning for weeks, and with Daniel away on a business trip, I finally had the time and space. It was quiet in the house. Too quiet, really. The hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floor were the only sounds I heard as I wiped down the shelves, fluffed the throw pillows, and dusted the windowsills. That's when my eyes landed on his ficus plant. Daniel loved that plant. He'd had it longer than he'd had me. It sat in the corner of our living room like some sacred object. Tall, leafy, and thriving, thanks to Daniel's obsessive watering schedule and special organic soil blend. He even talked to it sometimes. I thought it would look better near the window, so I wrapped my arms around the ceramic pot and gave it a gentle tug. It didn't budge. A little more force. Still stuck. I tilted it slightly to loosen it, but the weight shifted fast, and before I could steady it, the entire thing slipped through my hands. Crash! It shattered. Every bit of that thick pot exploded into large, jagged pieces across the wooden floor. Soil spilled in clumps, and the plant flopped onto its side like it had fainted. My heart pounded. I gasped and dropped to my knees, brushing soil off my jeans. "Daniel's gonna kill me," I whispered. But as I started picking up the larger ceramic pieces, I noticed something strange. A plastic bag tucked into the base of the soil, wrapped in tape. My fingers froze mid-reach. What in the world? I pulled it out gently, still confused. It was sealed tightly, dusty, and thick. I set it aside and continued cleaning up the mess. But that bag, it called to me. Once the plant was in a bucket of fresh water and the soil was mostly back where it belonged, I sat on the couch and unwrapped the taped plastic. Inside was a long white envelope. I opened it. Stacks of $100 bills stared back at me. Bundles and bundles of them, crisp and organized. My breath hitched. I touched the edge of one. Real. Definitely real. But that wasn't all. Tucked behind the cash was a photograph. An old one, faded at the edges like it had been handled too many times. I turned it over slowly. There was Daniel, younger, hair shorter, maybe 24. But standing beside him was a woman I didn't recognize and a little girl. My stomach turned. Who were they? Why were they hidden here? In the bottom of a plant, Daniel guarded like a dragon. The silence in the room suddenly felt heavier. I looked around like someone might pop out and yell, "Gotcha!" But no one did. I sat there, the cash in one hand, the photo in the other, my heart racing so fast I could hear it in my ears. I wasn't sure what I had just stepped into. But I knew one thing for certain. Daniel had been hiding something from me. Something big. Viewers, what would you do if you found thousands of dollars and a strange photo hidden in your partner's favorite plant? Would you confront them? Stay quiet and investigate more? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading all of them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you want to see what happens next in Claire's journey. This story is only just beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. No matter how I tried to calm down, my brain kept circling back to the photo, the woman, the little girl, and Daniel's arm around both of them, like a family. I laid the picture on the coffee table and stared at it under the lamp. The photo looked like it was taken in a park. Everyone was smiling. Daniel looked happy, carefree, younger, but clearly him. But the girl, she couldn't be older than 6. Her hand was wrapped around Daniel's pinky, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And the woman, slim, curly brown hair, a soft smile. She didn't look familiar. No names, no date, no writing. I checked the back of the photo again just to be sure. Nothing. I looked at the cash again too. Neatly stacked, clean, untouched, tens of thousands of dollars, just sitting there, buried in a plant pot. I asked myself the question I didn't want to ask. Why would Daniel hide this? He'd never given me a reason not to trust him, until now. He was a good husband, kind, thoughtful, but also private. Very private. He didn't like questions. He didn't like surprises. He didn't like when I touched his stuff. Now I was wondering if all of that had been a warning sign I ignored. I got up, turned on the hallway light, and walked slowly toward our bedroom. His closet was on the far wall, neatly arranged, exactly how he liked it. I opened the bottom drawer. It creaked softly. Nothing unusual. Sweaters, ties, socks. But as I pushed the drawer all the way in, I heard a soft clink behind it. My heart skipped. I slid the drawer out entirely, setting it aside. In the narrow, empty space behind it, nestled against the wooden back panel, was a small metal key. Just a plain, old-fashioned key. No tag, no label. I picked it up carefully and stared at it. It was slightly worn, like it had been used. Often. Now I had a photo. I had money. And now, a key. But a key to what? I checked the drawers again. Nothing else. I searched Daniel's nightstand. Just books and charger cords. Back in the living room, I sat cross-legged on the carpet, holding the key like it would give me answers. But all I had were more questions. What was the money for? Who was the woman? Why was this photo hidden so carefully? And why now, after 8 years of marriage, was I learning this? Daniel was due back in 4 days. That gave me time. Time to figure out the truth. But I had no idea where to start. I thought about calling his sister, Melanie. She and I had always been close. Maybe she could tell me something. But would she even know? Would she tell me if she did? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But part of me felt like I'd just cracked open a life I didn't recognize. Like I'd stepped into someone else's marriage. I looked at the photo one more time before slipping it back into the envelope. The little girl's eyes stared straight into the camera. She had Daniel's smile. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I even wanted the answers I was about to go looking for. But it was too late now. The pot was broken. The secret was out. And there was no going back. I decided to invite Melanie over. Not because I wanted to talk, at least not openly, but because I needed to watch her, to see her face, her reactions, to see if she knew anything. She arrived like she always did, grinning, holding a small bag of cookies, and complaining about traffic. "You always make this place feel so cozy," she said, stepping inside and slipping off her sandals. "It's like walking into a hug." I smiled politely and offered her tea. Chamomile for her, peppermint for me. We sat on the couch, legs tucked under us, as she went on about work gossip and her latest dating disaster. I nodded, laughed where I needed to, but inside I was focused, watching, listening. "So," she said after a while, "how's the alone time? Missing your man yet?" I sipped my tea, keeping my tone light. "It's peaceful. Gives me time to do some deep cleaning." She chuckled. "Don't go throwing out any of Daniel's stuff. You know how weird he is about his things." We both laughed, but my eyes stayed on her. "What do you mean weird?" I asked. "He's just particular." She raised an eyebrow. "Please. You remember when he wouldn't even let movers touch that ficus tree when you two first moved in? Said it had sentimental value? I thought he was being dramatic. Who gets attached to a plant like that?" I smiled, but it felt hollow. "Yeah, that ficus." My hands tightened slightly around my cup. Melanie sipped her tea and leaned back. "Daniel's always had his own way of doing things. He's good at pretending everything's perfect when really, he just doesn't like dealing with people." That was new. Daniel had always seemed warm, sociable, even charming. Or maybe that was just the version I got. "Did he always keep secrets?" I asked casually. Melanie tilted her head. "Secrets? Not really." "Well, unless you count the whole mess with her." I blinked. "Her?" She froze. A flicker of regret passed across her face. I mean, ugh, I wasn't supposed to say anything. Never mind. Forget I said that. I leaned forward slowly, my voice gentle. Mel, what mess? Melanie shifted uncomfortably. It's not my place. Daniel would kill me if he knew I brought it up. It's just, he had a rough time in his early 20s, got involved with someone he shouldn't have. It ended badly, that's all. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Was it serious? She hesitated. Yeah, for a while. But it's ancient history, Claire. He doesn't even talk about her anymore. He hasn't seen her in... She stopped herself. I leaned in. In what? Melanie laughed awkwardly, avoiding my eyes. It's been forever. I don't know the details, really. But I saw the truth flicker in her eyes. She knew more. I nodded and forced a smile, changing the subject back to something lighter. I didn't want to scare her off. I needed her to feel comfortable, but her slip had said enough. He hadn't seen her in a while. That meant there had been someone important. And the way Melanie avoided specifics told me that this her wasn't just an old girlfriend. Maybe it was the woman in the photo. Maybe that little girl was part of the mess she mentioned. My chest tightened. I felt the pieces shifting, slowly forming a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see. After Melanie left, I sat on the couch in silence. The cookies she brought sat untouched on the table. My tea had gone cold. I pulled out the photo again, looked at the woman's face, then the girl's. And for the first time, I allowed myself to ask the question out loud. Did he have a child before me? The house didn't answer. Only the silence did. I couldn't stop thinking about the key. After Melanie's visit, everything felt more real and more dangerous. Daniel's secret wasn't just an old flame or some youthful mistake. There was depth to it, something layered, something he clearly didn't want uncovered. And now I had a key. It was small and silver, a bit scratched along the ridges. I'd kept it in my robe pocket like a charm I wasn't sure I wanted to use. That morning, I stood in the garage, staring at Daniel's old travel bags. He kept everything here, his hiking boots, a box of tools, old files he said he didn't need but wouldn't throw away. And behind those bags was an old gray storage trunk. It had always been there, and I had never paid attention to it. I had assumed it was filled with junk or old cables. I pushed everything aside and knelt in front of it. There it was, a small keyhole in the center of the metal latch. My heart thudded as I reached into my pocket. Slowly, I inserted the key and turned. Click. It opened. Inside, a black lockbox. One of those fireproof ones people use to store birth certificates or emergency cash. I lifted it out and set it on the floor. This one had a second lock. The same key worked again. When the lid opened, I felt a rush of cold air hit my face, even though the garage was warm. Like something had been sealed tightly for years. Inside were several items. A thick manila envelope, 3 passports, a pair of gold wedding bands, and a folded piece of paper. I reached for the passports first. The first one had Daniel's face, but not Daniel's name. It said, Stephen Granger. I blinked and checked again. Same photo, different name. The second passport had his real name. The third one, another fake identity. Why would he have fake passports? I felt dizzy. My mouth went dry. I opened the envelope next. It was full of papers, some in different languages, others with business logos I didn't recognize. There were money transfers, legal forms, a birth certificate. My hands stopped when I saw a marriage certificate. Daniel's name. A woman named Monica Fields. I stared at the date. It was before we met. But what froze me was the notepaper tucked behind it. It had handwriting I didn't recognize. It simply said, "You said you'd come back. She's still waiting." I didn't know if she meant the woman or the child, but I suddenly couldn't breathe. I closed the lockbox and hugged it to my chest. Back inside the house, I sat at the kitchen table and spread everything out. Daniel, my husband, had not only been married before, but he had changed names. He had kept a life locked away, buried behind storage and silence, and he had hidden it inside a ficus plant, like a secret he wanted nearby but never seen. Who was Monica? Where was she now? And most importantly, why had Daniel kept these things? The wedding bands were simple, worn down. One of them was a woman's. I picked it up and turned it in my fingers. It was inscribed on the inside. MFDL, forever isn't long enough. I let the ring slip from my hand and clink against the table. This wasn't just a breakup he'd buried. It was a life, a family, maybe even a child. And I was sitting in the middle of it. Wife number 2. Without ever knowing I wasn't the first. I looked out the window. The ficus stood quietly in the sunlight, as if mocking me. I thought back to how Daniel had always said, "That plant's been through everything with me." I thought he meant stress, jobs, moves. Now I wondered if he meant lies. The next morning, I stepped outside for air. My thoughts were tangled, and I hadn't slept much. The sky was a dull gray, the kind of morning that felt heavy on your skin. Even the birds were quiet. I needed clarity. Or maybe I just needed someone to talk to. Someone who didn't know Daniel like I did. Someone on the outside. That's when I saw Mrs. Grant watering her roses across the street. She was in her usual wide-brimmed hat, garden gloves on, and a sprayer in hand. Sharp as ever, despite her age. Always watching, always polite. She looked up and smiled. "Morning, Claire. You're up early." I crossed the street slowly, feeling unsure. "Couldn't sleep." She said, setting her sprayer down. "You look like you've got something on your mind." I tried to smile. "Just a lot going on." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly behind her glasses. "Daniel's still out of town, right?" "Yeah. Supposed to be back in 2 days." She nodded slowly, then said something that made me stop cold. "You know, he always did have a habit of leaving just before things got too quiet." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Grant hesitated. She took off her gloves and leaned on the garden fence. "Don't take this the wrong way, dear, but I've lived on this street a long time. Long before you and Daniel moved in. I've seen things." "Like what?" She sighed and glanced around, as if making sure no one else was listening. "Years ago, maybe 7 or 8, the police came by. 2 officers. Suits. Asking about Daniel." My stomach flipped. "Police?" She nodded. "Said they were looking into someone connected to him, a woman. They didn't say much, but they seemed serious. Daniel wasn't home that day and they never came back. But it stuck with me." "Did you tell Daniel?" She looked at me carefully. "No. I didn't want to stir things. He already gave me the feeling he was hiding something. Always friendly, but never open." I looked down at my feet. The gravel shifted under my shoes. Mrs. Grant stepped closer. "Claire, I don't know what's going on, and I won't pry. But if something doesn't feel right, trust yourself. Women know. We always know. Sometimes too late." I nodded slowly, unsure how much to say. She reached out and gently touched my arm. "You're a good girl. Be careful. I've seen the signs before. Men disappearing for days, keeping things locked away, snapping when you ask the wrong question. That's not normal, sweetheart. That's warning." I swallowed hard. "Did you ever see him with someone else? Before me?" She hesitated again. "There was a woman once. I saw her get out of his car early one morning. He looked nervous. She didn't look like she wanted to be here. That was before you moved in." I clenched my hands. "Did she have a child with her?" Mrs. Grant shook her head. "No, just her. But I remember thinking she looked heartbroken." The wind blew softly through the trees, but it felt colder now. "I don't know what he's wrapped up in," she continued, "but if you've found something, don't ignore it." I nodded. Thank you. Really. She gave me a sad smile. You remind me of myself years ago. I stayed quiet too long. Don't make that mistake. I walked back to the house with my heart pounding. Police, a strange woman, a nervous Daniel. It all lined up with what I'd found. Inside, I sat at the table and looked at the photo again. That woman, that child, the fake passports, the lockbox, the note. And now, a neighbor's warning. Daniel had built a wall around a part of his life he didn't want me to see. But I had already torn it down. And I wasn't stopping now. It was around noon when I sat in front of Daniel's laptop. He rarely used it at home, preferring his work-issued tablet, but he had left the laptop behind this time. It was password-protected, of course, but I knew him well enough to guess. He always used the same combination, the year we got married and the word focus, a play on his precious ficus. I typed, 2014 focus. It opened. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Emails, maybe? Calendar entries? Anything that might help me understand where he was and who he was. I started with his email. Most of it was boring office chatter, memos, meeting reminders, digital receipts. But as I scrolled deeper, I found a flight confirmation from 2 days ago. The destination? Chicago. That wasn't where Daniel said he was going. He had told me he was headed to Denver for a tech conference. He even mentioned the hotel he'd booked. I searched the inbox again, looking for anything about Denver. Nothing. Not a single reservation, no car rental, no hotel booking. But the Chicago flight? That one was real. Booked. Paid for. Flown. My fingers started shaking as I clicked the next email. It was from an airline rewards program, thanking him for choosing us again for your visit to Chicago. Not first visit. Again. How many times had he gone there? I clicked over to his map history. He'd left it signed in. My breath caught. Multiple trips, spread out over the past year, all to the same area in Chicago. Same street, same neighborhood, near a school. I didn't want to think about what that meant, but it was too late. The girl in the photo. The child with Daniel's eyes. The one standing beside the woman I'd never met. Had he been going there? To see her? I sat back, my heart thudding so loud I could barely hear anything else. He hadn't gone on a business trip. He hadn't gone to Denver. He had gone to Chicago, and he had lied. Why? I heard the fridge hum in the background. A truck passed by outside. The house felt hollow, like it was echoing the truth back to me. He was living 2 lives. I opened a folder on his desktop labeled work stuff. Inside were spreadsheets, presentations, and a password-protected file named MF. Monica Fields. The name from the marriage certificate. The name of the woman in the photo. I didn't have the password. I didn't even try guessing. I closed the laptop slowly, my eyes stinging. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. I was numb, floating, like I was watching this happen to someone else. I thought back to all the little things. Daniel's mood swings, his last-minute trips, his odd silences when I asked about his past. He'd always told me there were parts of his life he didn't like revisiting. He said it was painful, messy. But he never told me what that meant. Now I knew. It meant there was someone else, a woman, maybe a child, maybe his child. And now he was back in contact with them. Secret flights, hidden documents, a photograph buried under a plant. I walked over to the ficus again. It looked so innocent, just a tree in a pot, but it had been guarding a secret for years. I touched one of the leaves gently. What else do I not know? The plant didn't answer, but my chest tightened. Daniel would be home tomorrow, and I didn't know if I was ready to face him. I heard the car pull into the driveway just after noon. I stood in the kitchen, hands gripping the edge of the counter, watching the clock tick forward with slow, painful precision. I had been waiting for this moment since the day the ficus pot shattered. I just didn't know what I would feel when it finally came. The front door opened. Claire? Daniel's voice called out like everything was normal, like he hadn't lied, like he hadn't been flying across the country behind my back. I didn't answer right away. I waited until I heard his footsteps in the hallway, his keys landing in the dish beside the door, his suitcase wheels rolling against the tile. He walked into the kitchen and froze. The table was set, but not for lunch. Laid out in front of me were the contents of the lockbox. The envelopes of cash. The photo of him, the woman, and the child. The fake passports. The marriage certificate. The handwritten note. I watched his eyes scan the evidence. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Finally, I spoke. Sit. He didn't move at first. He looked like he'd forgotten how. But eventually, slowly, he pulled out a chair and sat across from me. I sat too, folding my hands in front of me. I found it, I said, my voice calm. Inside the plant. He swallowed hard, still staring at the table. I can explain. I'm sure you can, I said quietly. But this time you're going to tell the truth. All of it. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands, sighed, and looked at me. Tired, defeated. Her name is Monica. We were married, a long time ago. Before I met you. And the child? He looked down. Yes, she's my daughter. Her name is Lily. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest, but I kept my voice steady. Why didn't you ever tell me? His fingers tapped against the edge of the table. Because I ruined everything. I left them. I wasn't ready to be a father. I panicked. I made mistakes. Big ones. I told myself I'd go back. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. And the fake passports? He hesitated. After I left, Monica got scared. Said she didn't trust me, said she'd go to court. I thought disappearing would make things easier. Easier for who? I asked sharply. He flinched. I know. It was selfish. I ran. I started over. When I met you, I wanted to be someone else. And for a while, I was. But Lily, I couldn't forget her. I stared at the photograph, the little girl with his smile. So you've been visiting them again? Yes, he said softly. Monica reached out last year. Lily's 12 now. She wanted to meet me. And what about me? I asked. Were you ever going to tell me? Daniel looked up, his eyes glassy. I wanted to, so many times, but I didn't know how. I didn't want to lose you. You lied every day, Daniel, I said. You let me believe I was your whole life. And all this time, I was living in half of one. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that could erase what he'd done. I stood slowly. You need to leave. He looked up in shock. Claire, I don't hate you, I said, but I can't share my life with someone who won't share theirs with me. He was silent. I took the photo from the table, folded it gently, and placed it in front of him. You should go see her. She deserves the truth, just like I did. He nodded, stood up, and without another word, walked out the door. As the door clicked shut, I felt the weight lift. The ficus still stood in the corner, no longer hiding anything. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe.